The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Monday, beginning of a new week, March 3rd, winter March, 2025. The year is speeding along. All right, we have quite a few topics today. We'll see how long it takes. I've got a hard stop, so probably an hour and a half show. I don't expect it to be longer than that, just to give you a heads up. I appreciate, we've already got a question. We've already got 2 stickers from Jonathan and Silvanus, so thank you guys. Really appreciate the support. We're going to talk about crypto and its big increase on Sunday. I mean, it was in decline over the last week and a half or so. Significant decline from a peak of 104 down to 78, I think, thousand. And then just took off yesterday, way up. So we'll talk about why that happened, what the hell's going on. We'll talk about Elon Musk's comments on Joe Rogan about Social Security being a Ponzi scheme. Welcome to the truth, Elon. Yes, absolutely. You should actually take that on. We'll talk about some developments at the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. Mostly good stuff. And then we'll talk about bad stuff, the ongoing threat of tariffs, maybe tomorrow, maybe not, who knows, we don't know, we'll find out, but supposedly tomorrow is the big tariff day, at least for Mexico and Canada, our enemies. And then we'll talk about business attitude towards Trump and what's going on there. There's been quite a bit of, I guess, shift in businesses' attitude towards Trump in the last few weeks. Yep. And what else? Yes, we'll talk about Trump, Russia, Israel, Gaza, and finally some good news. A private landing of a lunar lander, which is cool. All right, so let's start with our discussion of crypto. So as mentioned on Sunday, crypto prices really went through the roof. They went up, a variety of different ones. And all as a consequence of a new executive order from Donald Trump, basically saying that he intends to move forward on a U.S. crypto strategic reserve that's going to include Bitcoin, Ether, Solana, XRP, and Cardano. Surprised it doesn't include Doge. Those 5. And as a consequence, Bitcoin rose 9%, from about 93,000, and Ether jumped 11%. XRP, Solana jumped 20%, XRP went up 30%, and Cardano went up 60%. I don't think anybody had ever heard of Cardano unless you're in crypto. Before this, everybody got really excited. They finally, talking about my coin. It went up to all the way to $1.02. Interestingly, it turns out that our crypto czar, Sachs, right, who is now crypto czar, actually owns a significant position in all 5 crypto positions. David Sachs, right? David Sachs owns all 5 in his fund. David Sachs has been appointed crypto czar. He's a venture capitalist out of Silicon Valley, and a humongous has been over the last few years a fan of Donald Trump and Elon Musk, and he just got a lot richer. So have, I guess, probably, I don't know, but probably a bunch of other Doge, programmers, venture capitalists, appointees. Yeah, I mean, if you own a Bitwise 10 crypto index fund, the top 5 holdings of this fund have just gone through the roof. It's pretty exciting if you own this stuff. And there's some rumors about, I don't know if any of this is true, so who knows? But would you be surprised that 24 hours ago someone took a $200 million worth of Ethereum and Bitcoin long with 50 times leverage? So, 2% drop in Bitcoin would basically wipe him out, but a increase would make a lot of money. Did someone know? Of course they did. I mean, here's the funny thing. I mean, we complain about congressmen trading on inside information, which they have because they pass laws and stuff, and they trade in stocks. And based on that information, we know that the Republicans went after Pelosi for that. I've always said senators and congressmen should not allow to trade, period. They should have it all in a segregated account, index funds, and not trade at all. But now we have basically the Trump administration making decisions that have huge, massive implications in terms of profitability for a bunch of its employees, leaders. Talk about corruption. This is like on a new level, new scale. Now, Trump has really embraced the idea of a strategic national Bitcoin stockpile. He talked about this before the election. He talked about it early on. That's why Bitcoin kind of took off and made new highs. And then when it didn't seem to be happening and when tech stocks generally were struggling, Bitcoin declined, and so did many of the other cryptocurrencies. And then now he's giving it new life. So what would it entail for the United States to have a strategic national crypto, stockpile? Crypto, I assume it would be mostly Bitcoin and some of these other 4. What would that entail? Well, basically it would mean that the United States government would buy a bunch of crypto and sit on it. We're talking about a reserve. So this wouldn't be a fund that they would use to pay or buy equipment, pay salaries or anything like that. No, it would be a strategic reserve. So it would basically just sit on a hard drive waiting for the Russians or the Chinese to hack it. North Koreans are good at hacking crypto, I think. Anyway, it would sit somewhere in the government, and we know how secure government computers are. And it would basically have, because all crypto is, basically code, it would basically sit in a wallet somewhere on a government computer. I don't know how big this would be. And literally the government would go in and buy it. Now, the U.S. government already holds about 180,000 Bitcoins that are worth $18 billion based on current market prices. These are, Bitcoins that have been seized as part of cyber crime and other things, and I guess these were held back to cover agency expenses. But and there's some other crypto kind of tokens that the government holds. It's weird that the government hasn't sold all that it's actually holding it, but it already has 18 billion. So I assume this strategic reserve would be larger than that. Let's say it's $100 billion, which is not that big, but let's say it's $100 billion, or maybe it's $500 billion. I don't know. I don't know how ambitious they are. $500 billion, $100 billion. Let's say it's $100 billion. And what does that mean? It means the government will go into the marketplace and start buying, i.e. create demand for Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, and XRP. Now, these all there's limited supply of these cryptocurrencies. So increased demand will raise prices. So the immediate effect of this is to raise the price of all these cryptocurrencies, right? And if you own them, that'd be a great time to sell. Once the government comes in, buys the stuff, and then I would sell. Well, unless you believe this is going to become currency one day, and then you want to hold it on forever. So price will go up, and then what does the government do with it? It sits on it. But part of the interesting question about this is, where does the government get the money to buy it? Well, where does the government get money these days? There are only two sources of money that the government can get. It can either tax you, but all your tax money is already going for spending, or it can borrow. Now, it borrows a lot, $2 trillion now, in order to fund the deficit every single year. So whatever it borrowed in order to buy the crypto would directly increase the deficit. So if we have $2 trillion deficit, if the government, bought $100 billion of crypto, it would now increase the deficit by $100 billion. Or if they bought $500 billion, it would increase the deficit to by $500 billion. To do what? Crypto is not a productive asset. It's, at best, right now, it's a speculative asset. It has no productive use. It's not like investing in infrastructure, spending on infrastructure. It's not like spending on, I don't know, the CHIP Act, which I'm against, which is bad, but at least you could rationalize it to yourself. You can pretend to yourself that it will lead to some greater returns in the future. Here it's pure speculation. The idea is to buy it now, sit on it, with the idea, I guess, that it goes up in value, and one day you sell it, and the government makes a lot of money, and the government then is convinced that it is what? It is a great investor. I mean, what is the point? And this point has been made. People say, but the government has a gold reserve. There's supposedly, we'll find out when Elon Musk and Donald Trump visit Fort Knox, there's supposed to be a large gold reserve at Fort Knox. Yeah, that's stupid too. Why does the government have gold? The government shouldn't have gold. It should sell all the gold that it has and pay off the government debt. The gold sitting there is just a resource that's wasted. Reduce the debt. The government has a land reserve. It owns a lot of land in the United States. Yeah, that's stupid. Now, land can be productive so it can get some rents, but generally, it's stupid. Sell it. Pay off the debt. Why would the government take on another unproductive asset to create a reserve of? It serves no, zero, nada purpose. None. It's just another way for the government to spend your money and to enrich certain people. In this case, the tech executives that have volunteered, no pay, to come and work in the government. And in exchange for them volunteering to come and work in the government, hey, they just made, I don't know, hundreds of millions, several millions of dollars because the government is now saying it's going to buy, and then they're going to make more money when they actually buy it. And then, of course, somebody supposedly was buying in advance based on inside information, but I'm not even sure the insider trading laws apply to crypto. So they probably didn't violate the law. I mean, this is such a bizarre. So I'm just going to, Manso West says, if it takes energy to mine Bitcoin, they can build hydroelectric dams to mine the Bitcoin and sell off the extra energy to consumers. Yeah, so why can't they just build the hydroelectric dams anyway, which the United States hasn't built an hydroelectric dam in decades, but they could build one anyway and not mine for Bitcoin, and then we'll all have more cheaper electricity. I mean, mining Bitcoin is not a productive activity. It's not a productive activity because Bitcoin is not a productive asset. It's a purely speculative asset that is only worth anything if somebody ultimately finds a use for it. Doesn't have a use. But the U.S. government is going to prop it up. And the U.S. government is going to pick winners and losers within crypto. It's going to decide that these 5 cryptos are the good guys, and the other cryptos are the bad guys, and these 5 are going to win and the rest are not. I mean, this is one of the stupidest and most interventionist ideas ever. If you truly believe that crypto is valuable, crypto is the future, then the last thing in the world you would want is the government to stop buying it. How can Bitcoin be money? Money is the common means of exchange. Nobody uses Bitcoin to buy anything. It's not a medium of exchange. It's just a speculative asset that you hope and believe and pray and have faith that one day will become a medium of exchange and one day will be money. But it's not money today. I mean, people convince themselves of nonsense. But anybody who knows anything about monetary policy, knows anything about what money is, knows that Bitcoin is not money because nobody uses it as money. This money is the thing that people use to exchange stuff. Nobody uses Bitcoin to exchange anything. They buy it and hold it because they believe one day maybe it'll become money and then it'll go up. Or in this case, they believe that Donald Trump will stop buying it and therefore it will go up. It's not the foundation for day-to-day exchange. It might be one day, but that's pure speculation and pure faith. And it's, what does Bob say? It is speculative to an extent. An extent? Have you ever seen any money go up and down to the degree Bitcoin goes up and down in terms of its purchasing power on a daily basis? No other currency that I know of, other than in hyperinflation, where it only goes in one direction. But no other currency that I know of, money that I know of, ever in all of human history, has the volatility that Bitcoin has, which excludes it from being money. Because I don't know how much bread I can buy with Bitcoin tomorrow, because I have no idea how much Bitcoin will be worth tomorrow. It could be worth 94,000. It could be worth 104,000. It could be worth 54,000. Again, even the yen is nowhere close, not even close. You should actually look at the percentage changes of the yen. You guys have no clue. Look at the percentage changes of the yen versus the percentage changes of Bitcoin. It's not even in the same ballpark. You cannot have, by definition, you cannot have money whose value in terms of purchasing power fluctuates to the degree that Bitcoin does. And as long as it does, it cannot be used as money. Nobody's actually going to exchange it. The one country that embraced Bitcoin as a legal tender, what was it, 5 years ago? El Salvador, 4 years ago, El Salvador did that, has now rescinded that because nobody used it as money. So it's just, whatever, maybe somebody will find a use for it one day. Maybe one day in the very, very distant future, it will become money. I'm skeptical, doubt it very much. But right now, Bitcoin has no use. Bitcoin is purely a speculative asset that now the United States government is going to buy, which again is, as a finance guy, as an economist, one of the dumbest ideas in all of human history. The government does not need to be spending money to speculate. Does not seem to need to be spending money to speculate. And whether Bitcoin becomes money or not, one day, a lot of things could happen. Today, nothing. Zero, zilch. All right, talk about Ponzi schemes. Well, Bitcoin's not a Ponzi scheme. It's just a speculative, bizarre bubble scheme or something. But talk about Ponzi schemes. Last week, Elon Musk did a lengthy interview with Joe Rogan. And one of the actual correct things that he said in that interview, not everything he said was correct, but one of the things that he said, which actually was true in the interview, related to Social Security. And Elon Musk actually called Social Security a biggest Ponzi scheme of all time, which I was incredibly happy to hear because I'd written about it being a Ponzi scheme, what is it, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. There's a Forbes op-ed that Don Watkins and I wrote about how Social Security is indeed has all the characteristics of a Ponzi scheme, except for one big one. One big one makes, what's the one thing that makes Social Security different than every other Ponzi scheme in history? Well, the main difference is that the Social Security Ponzi scheme requires you to participate in by law. You don't have a choice. You're not being conned into it. It's all up front. You know exactly what it is. And it's not just legal. You're forced to participate in it. There is literally coercion applied to you to participate in it. Try not paying payroll taxes. It's not just it's legal, right? And of course, it is. How does Social Security work? You pay into it when you're young, or really until you retire, or until you choose to withdraw, which could be up to age 71, I think, or 72, at which point you have to withdraw. And you pay into it through your payroll tax, and you think that money is being put aside for you, maybe invested in some, government bonds or something reasonable to invest in. And then, one day it is paid back from you from the account that you have with the government. But of course, that's not how it works. And it's not that the government's deceiving you about this. That's not how it works, and the government completely acknowledges that that's not how it works. Everything that you pay in today is spent on the other side on people receiving Social Security. There is no pool of money, and certainly no pool of money with your name on it. It's just spent on retirees right now. And then if, in any particular year, Social Security has more money coming in than going out, which is no longer the case, but used to be the case, Social Security, more money coming in than going out, then the extra money that should be in the pool is spent by other government agencies, is spent on other government stuff. So the reality is that everything you put in today is being spent to fulfill the promises made to old people when they were young, which exactly is the way a Ponzi scheme works. Because now, today, we are starting to have the problem that every Ponzi scheme tends to have, and that is there's less and less and less money coming into the system. And more with the baby boomers retiring, more and more money going out of the system. So less money's coming in, more money's going out. And just like every Ponzi scheme, it has to collapse. Now, here's the solution to the Ponzi scheme. The solution to the Ponzi scheme is more illegal immigration. Legal immigration is no good because legal immigrants pay into Social Security, but then they expect to collect on the other side. The really great benefit of illegal immigrants is they pay into Social Security. It's just taken out of their paycheck automatically. But they are not eligible to receive any, so they don't get anything back. The more illegal immigrants we have, the more people are paying into the system without taking anything out of it. It's part of the discrepancies that Elon Musk has discovered. More people pay in than ever expect to get out. Pretty amazing. Says, if you really want to solve the Social Security problem, bring in more illegal immigrants. Or, and sadly, when they went into this, right? Trump didn't really explain what he was going to do about it and how you could solve it. But basically, what you need to do is privatize it. Find a way to privatize Social Security. Find a way to eliminate it. Do away with it as a government program and turn it over to, make it into a private saving program. Chile, the country of Chile, did this 30 years ago and has the results have been incredible benefits to everybody. Retirees get more money. There's no Social Security burden on the government. The system is not going bankrupt. It's win, 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 win. But it is political dynamite. Social Security is part of the entitlement state that Americans seem to refuse to be willing to even talk about giving up. And of course, Donald Trump has said it's off the table. Musk, by the way, when he had explained what he meant by a Ponzi scheme, he said, well, people pay into Social Security and the money goes out of Social Security immediately. Absolutely. But the obligation for Social Security is your entire retirement career. If you look at the future obligations of Social Security, it far exceeds tax revenues. Yes. Social Security is already on an accounting basis bankrupt. Not on a cash flow basis, but on an accounting basis. So it needs to be done away with. Now, Musk, as part of Doge, is not touching it. And there is no question with people living longer, with people still retiring, basically at the same age, but living longer, and Social Security not being reformed and not being adjusted and not being changed. Yeah, obligations are only going to increase. And it's a bankrupt system, but worse than bankrupt, it's immoral. Stop taking my money. I can save for myself. And remember, they don't just take 12.5% off of your salary, 6% or something off of your salary. Then the employer pays money that would go to you if not. So you're literally earning less money than you otherwise would. Musk went on to tell his BS about the millions and millions of people who are getting, or a lot of people getting Social Security who are basically dead, which is completely bogus and it'll be shown to bogus over and over again. But he continues to spread that misinformation or fake news in order to show that Doge is doing its job. The reality is that everything he has said about Social Security in terms of the number of people who are dead, who have Social Security numbers, all of that has been known. It's been known for at least 20 years. People have talked about it. The fact that the database is not being cleaned is pathetic. But very, very few people, are getting Social Security, when they shouldn't, because of age, because they're actually dead. So there's fraud, but the fraud is relatively small, certainly relatively small to what he is talking about. Of course, Bernie Sanders freaked out when he heard about this. Social Security keeps 18 million seniors out of poverty every year. Yeah, they'd be less poor if their money had been invested in a private investment account rather than in your Ponzi scheme. So, yeah, I mean, the world is flipping out. People are flipping out over the comment of Ponzi scheme, but he's absolutely right. And of course, it's true of much of the welfare state and the evil of the welfare state, which, again, it seems like the Doge is not willing to actually. What the hell is going on here? All right. Actually deal with. So Trump has said it's off the table. Republicans have said it's off the table. So be it. But unless we fix Social Security, fix it, I think, ideally by privatizing it, but fix it even by a status standard has to be fixed. Or you fix Medicare. Everything else that they're doing in terms of spending and all of that is just, they're just playing with you. There's nothing serious about their efforts at all. All right. Let's see. Yeah, a couple of stories about the EPA that I think is interesting. And so one of the things that Doge has done, which is actually good. Actually, I don't think this is Doge. I actually think this is a new EPA director, which is Lee Zaidin. Zaidin is the new director. And one of the things that they've discovered is that the EPA every year has been handing out basically $20 billion to nonprofits, NGOs, they call them, NGOs, to nonprofits who are environmentalist groups who then lobby government and Congress and the EPA to provide more money for environmental protection, including more money to be provided to the nonprofits who lobbied to have more money. And it's like this amazing circle where your tax money is basically being funneled to all kind of leftist environmentalist groups that then have an inside track with the government to just constantly pressure the government to increase their own funding. I mean, this is just morally depraved. The government already is a nonprofit organization. Why does it have to give any money to any nonprofit? There should be a law. Here's a law that the Trump administration could advocate for Congress to pass. The government should never, ever, 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 under any circumstances, provide funds to a nonprofit organization. It can buy products from companies when they need them. It can buy information from consultants and others, but it should never provide taxpayer money to charitable, nonprofit NGOs, which are almost always involved in one way or another in the bureaucracy, in pressuring the bureaucracy to install policies the bureaucracy wants to install anyway, and to increase the amount of money they ultimately get. That cycle needs to end. Now, it won't end as long as we don't shrink the scope of what government does, as long as we don't actually limit to protection of individual rights. But, this $20 billion to nonprofits. What the EPA is trying to do is it's actually trying to claw some of that money back and shut the spigot. So good for Lee Zaidin, and I'm probably mispronouncing his name, for doing this. This is important work. This is good work. This is the kind of corruption that came in with Biden and his association with these leftist groups. A lot of this money is a consequence of the Inflation Reduction Act, which, by the way, did the exact opposite of reducing inflation, actually increased it. Just shutting off that spigot. It's not a big deal in terms of government spending. Just like shutting down USAID is not a big deal in terms of government spending. It's a big deal about government not doing things it shouldn't do. And it's a big deal in terms of government corruption, in terms of who the beneficiaries are from the government action. Now, Zayden is also doing something else really, really important at the EPA. And he's one of, I think, the good guys, the Trump appointments. So one of the better appointees in terms of what they are going to do. And one of the things that it appears that he is going to be advocating for is a reconsideration of the idea that climate change constitutes a pollutant, that CO2 constitute a pollutant, that climate change, so-called gases, constitute a pollutant, and therefore can be regulated by the EPA. So there's a whole number of EPA regulations that are dependent on this scientific declaration that climate change is a catastrophe and something needs to be done about it. And Zayden is trying to get that off the books so that then he can dramatically reduce regulation. And this will affect, everything, power utilities, it'll affect automobiles, it'll affect all these things. It'll be huge. I think it's on the list of things that Alex Epstein has said need to go if we're going to have real energy reform in the United States. So it is an exciting, I think, an exciting step. And again, one of the things that the Trump administration, in spite of himself, is going to do that is good. That is good. So talk about things the Trump administration is going to do that is not good. Well, starting tomorrow, supposedly, who knows? It depends on what Trump decides and what side of the bed he sleeps tonight or whatever, what he wakes up at 1 o'clock deciding to do. Supposedly tomorrow, 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico go into effect, as well as an additional 10% on China. So China tariff will go from 10% to 20%. And that will happen supposedly tomorrow. In addition, Trump is going to work to have these reciprocal tariffs on all the countries in the world, certainly all the countries where we have a trade deficit. We have a trade deficit with 100 countries in the world. So we have different tariff regimes with those 100 countries, all in an effort to close the trade deficit, as if the trade deficit is a problem. Indeed, the trade deficit in 2024 was the largest it's ever been, $1.2 trillion. More goods came into the United States than was sent out of the United States. Now, for a variety of reasons, that doesn't matter. I've talked about this many, many times, why that is irrelevant economically. It's irrelevant from every perspective possible. But it's an obsession of Trump's. It's been an obsession of Trump since the 1980s. Trade deficits to him are somehow people stealing our money, which is insane. But it's part of Donald Trump's complete and utter economic ignorance. As I've said many, many times over the last 9 years, he is economically equivalent of illiterate when it comes to economics. These tariffs supposedly are going to go in. Some of countries like Vietnam and India have seen significant increases in trade deficits as people have shifted manufacturing from China to Vietnam and India in order to avoid tariffs on China. They have become much greater exporters to the United States, and we're importing a lot from them rather than from China. So again, they're going to have special tariffs just for them in order to deal with the fact that we're importing so much from them. So it's a disaster, and part of it is nobody really knows what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen over the next few months when it comes to tariffs in terms of these reciprocal tariffs and what they mean. Remember, Trump has also said that there will be 25% tariffs on the EU and the European Union beyond the reciprocal tariffs that are going to be with every country. I'm not sure how he's going to do that. I think the only country in the world right now that doesn't have to worry about Trump sanctions, tariffs, or getting mean and nasty at is, drum roll please, Putin's Russia. I mean, Putin's Russia right now is on the best favored nation status. It's beloved by the Trump administration. So other than them, we just don't know who's going to be tariffed, when they're going to be tariffed, how much they're going to be tariffed. And the EU would be huge, right? EU. But of course, even bigger than that is Canada and Mexico, our biggest trading partners and friends for now. And this is in addition, of course, to steel tariffs and the aluminum tariffs and the lumber tariffs. He's increasing lumber. He did do one good thing. As I need to remember always to give Trump credit for when he does something good. He did do one good thing. He's actually signed an executive order to reduce dramatically regulations on the harvesting of lumber in the United States. So basically dramatically increasing the ability to produce lumber in the U.S., chop down trees. That is fantastic. That is really, really good. That is really, really, really good. Bob says, he's so ignorant, Bob. It's unbelievable. He's the new ignorant Scott. Maybe he is Scott. He sounds so much alike in their ignorance. Canada needs to end protectionism in banking, dairy, telecom. Last I looked, the United States had massive subsidies and tariffs and regulations controlling the importation of dairy. So it was bilateral. The United States has massive controls of dairy. You can't compete. You can't bring in dairy into the United States. You got to be kidding me. And baby food and a million other things you can't even bring that don't even count as tariffs because all kind of other restrictions. Banking? You try to come into the United States as a foreign bank and do banking in the United States and all the additional costs and regulations and controls and so on. Canada has barriers, yeah, but the United States has just as many barriers on banking. And yeah, I'm pretty sure that is true of telecom. So, Bob, Toronto Dominion is willing to pay the extra cost in order to be in the United States, but it is not cheap. And it is very difficult. And most Canadian banks that have come into the United States have left because, they're burdened. They can't compete because the government burdens them. The United States does not like foreign competitors coming into the United States. Try being an airline and coming into the United States. Can't do that. They're barred from flying in the United States from city to city. So, no, I mean, talk about protectionism. There's a ton of it in the United States. Canada has some too. And it would be great if they reduced theirs. It would be good for Canadians in particular. But as I've said often, Bob's logic is the Canadians are shooting themselves in the knee, so we should shoot ourselves in the balls or in the hip or in the groin or ultimately just shoot yourself in the brain because that's kind of brain dead arguments you get from pro-tariff people. It really is brain dead. There's just no case for tariffs. Zero, zilch, nada. So, Canada's doing bad stuff to itself. Let's do bad stuff to ourselves as well. Let's join them in doing bad stuff. The consequence of all this right now is that business leaders are having a really hard time figuring out what to do. As Ken Griffith from Citadel says, very difficult time to invest. On Semiconductor CEO says, everybody's paralyzed in business. Franklin Templeton, CEO, I'm sorry, I can't be particularly positive about investing and about the future of the U.S. economy right now. NASDAQ Private Markets CEO, the chaos that is reigning right now is causing everyone to sit on their hands. In other words, businessmen are paralyzed. They're not investing, which means they're not producing, which means they're not growing the economy. Economic growth comes from business investment. Economic growth comes from entrepreneurs. Economic growth comes from starting new businesses or expanding existing businesses and hiring new people. And, while CEOs in business were incredibly optimistic when Trump came into office, that optimism seems to be fading. Business executives understand how bad tariffs are universally. Even short-term tariffs have a huge negative impact. I mean, even just the threat of tariffs has a huge negative impact. You can see that in steel prices right now in the United States. U.S. manufacturers of steel have increased the price of steel significantly in the last week or so, couple of weeks, since Trump announced significant steel tariffs go into effect in a few weeks. So they haven't gone into effect yet, and already prices are going up. Why not? They don't have competition from foreigners anymore. They can squeeze American consumers of steel. So even short-term tariffs are incredibly destructive. Even the threat of tariffs is incredibly destructive. There's literally, and I'll keep saying this, nobody believes me. You guys can keep pretending, rationalizing, embracing the Trump zombie syndrome. Tariffs, short-term, long-term, before they're put in place, nothing good about them. Nothing good about them. And to use them as negotiating tactics is just about being a global bully, which is what Trump is and what he's turning America into. And there will be massive negative consequence of that in the days, weeks, months, years, decades to come. You heard it here. You can call me on it if everything is rosy in the decades to come. All right, where are we? Oh, yeah, this is a quick story. It's one of those stories that it's hard to believe, but it's true. It's not being verified by a number of sources. It was initially, I didn't want to report this because it seemed, no, they haven't really done this. But yeah, this is the Trump administration. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered U.S. Cyber Command. Pete Hegseth has ordered U.S. Cyber Command to halt all offensive operations against Russia. This is part of a broader effort to appease, to kowtow, to be nice to President Putin and get him to the negotiating table. Trump, in his first term, actually increased cyber operations against Russia. The whole U.S. Cyber Command increased in budget, and there was a significant, now, during that period and since then, Russia has been engaged in cyber attacks against the United States on a regular basis. It has huge network for espionage purposes that constantly is prodding the U.S. Much of the offensive operations against Russia, or not much, but a significant amount, are done by the UK and the Canadians. Oh, those Canadians, those horrible, evil Canadians. They are actually involved as part of our intelligence cooperation in cybersecurity vis-a-vis the Russians. But the U.S. Cyber Command is a significant player, and now it's not. It's literally being told, and this is unbelievable to me, to stop offensive operations. Now, still defense, they're still paying defense, but they can't be in the office. Now, nobody knows what the exact scope and duration of this is, but this is just more following on everything else we've talked about regarding Ukraine and Russia. More Trump appeasing, kissing Putin's behind, being Tucker Carlson, or it seems like Tucker Carlson is ultimately Donald Trump's chief foreign policy advisor. Yep, I think that's fair to say. All right, that was a quick story on that. More U.S. appeasement of Russia. Israel. Phase one of the ceasefire agreement that the Trump envoy negotiated and forced Israel to sign on to has passed. They supposedly began out negotiating the second phase, but the Trump administration decided to try to get Hamas to extend the first phase. Israel agreed to extend the first phase and continue with prisoner release, hostage versus prisoner release. And Hamas turned them down. Hamas said, no, we're not interested in extending the first phase. As a consequence, Israel has now stopped any entry of goods into the Gaza Strip. Now, remember, they're still supplying them with water. They still supply them with internet service. They still supply them with cell phone service. But they stopped the food envoys. Now, enough food has already entered the Gaza Strip over the last few months. They have enough food for months and months and months. So the Gaza Strip is not going to be short on food. But they have stopped it and try to put pressure on Hamas to come back to, quote, the negotiating table. Israel supposedly was going to go back into the Gaza Strip and resume the war. That is what Netanyahu promised repeatedly that he would do. It does not seem like that is in the cards anytime soon, at least. We will see what happened. Of course, they gave up a lot of the strategic edge by leaving the Gaza Strip and having their soldiers withdraw from particularly Netzarim, the corridor that split the Gaza Strip into north and south. They would have to go in and do all the work over again. How many lives will be lost again in order to do that? Anyway, Trump is supporting the stopping of the aid, but I also think that Trump's envoy in the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, who's also the envoy to Russia, he's a busy guy in terms of U.S. appeasement, is also putting pressure on Netanyahu not to engage in a military operation in Gaza, which is Netanyahu's MO anyway. I mean, he's a wimp, as I've told you over and over again. So Israel withdrawing or stopping entry of goods into the Gaza Strip, which you should never have allowed to begin with. But there you have it. All right, finally, some good news. A private lunar lander that's on the moon, carrying a drill, vacuum, and other equipment for NASA, touched down on the moon on Sunday. It's the latest in a string of companies looking to kickstart business on Earth's celestial neighbor ahead of supposedly an astronaut mission to return to the moon. This company is called Firefly Aerospace, and it's the land is called Blue Ghost. It descended into the lunar orbit, onto the thing on autopilot. It aimed for the slopes of an ancient volcanic dome, it was successful. Not all of them have been successful. Mission control for this was from outside Austin, Texas. Another thing Austin is becoming important for, it appears, private space. And they stuck the landing, so they're on the moon. It's cool. It's exciting. This is a company that was started about a decade ago. It's the first private outfit to put a spacecraft on the moon without crashing or falling over. So it landed, didn't fall. Several countries have faltered. There have only been 5 successes: Russia, the US, China, India, and Japan. I know Israel failed recently, and some others have failed. So about half an hour after landing, the Blue Ghost started to send back pictures. The first one, I guess, was a selfie. And they're on the moon. There are 2 other companies that are trying to put landers on the moon as well. That'll happen probably later this week. Wow. So it is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. They were seeing an explosion, a real boom in private spacecraft. There's also a private a probe that's going out and trying to land on an asteroid with the idea of trying to establish the viability of asteroid mining. The technology around space program is only accelerating and improving, and the more private it is, the more competitive it becomes, and the more they figure out how to create business models that do not rely on NASA, the more innovation, the more private capital will flow into us, and the more advancement we will get. So, exciting progress in the private lunar space. All right, that is the news for what is it, March 3rd, Monday, at the beginning of the week. Let me turn to your questions, and we'll do that. We'll do that quickly, and then we'll call it a day. I've got to teach a class in just over an hour. All right. Wow, we got 3 $50 questions, so we'll start with those. The Prophet did 50 pounds sterling, so he gets that is the most money. So we'll start with him. The Prophet, as a finance expert, what are your biggest tips, tricks? For example, on a previous show, you mentioned that you spend on credit cards only rather than debit, so the money can earn interest while waiting to repay the balance. This I thought was great. God, I never even considered that to be a trick or a tip. I don't mean to insult anybody. It just seemed obvious to me. But yes, as long as you pay off your debts, you use a credit card, and there are other advantages to using credit cards, which are worth mentioning. You get points if you use one of the credit cards for airlines or hotels. I literally, every single credit card I have is a point generating card. In American Express, for example, Gold, you'll get, I think, 4 points on restaurants, and Capital One card, you get 2 points for every dollar you spend, and then you can move those points to airlines to get free airline tickets. Other cards, like Discover Card, I know has this, and Chase has cards like this, and Bank of America had cards like this. You'll actually get a percentage of everything you spend back. They'll literally send you a check. So you're getting a discount on everything that you buy. You get an instant discount by using these credit cards because either you get points, which then can turn into free stays at hotels or free airline tickets. That's a discount, right? Or Amazon, you can get, basically with the Amazon card, you get 5% off of everything you buy. Why wouldn't you do that? you use the Amazon card to buy everything you can on Amazon. Everything you buy on Amazon, you use the Amazon card. You get 5% of that back. And then you just have to make sure that when the time comes, you pay off the card on time. And that is easy to do because you can set up your bank account. You can set up the credit card company to draw on your bank account the full amount whenever it's due. And then it's just an automatic payment. All my credit cards are set to take automatic payment at the end of every billing period. And I have massive quantities of points at American Express, at American Airlines, at Marriott and Hyatt Hotels and other places. So, it's to me, it's a no-brainer to use a credit card. Because it makes it easier for me to track my spending. I can download my credit card statement I use Quicken. Quicken allows me to track all of my spending and all of my income, everything. Quicken is amazing. They're all good for different things. Ben says Amex is best. Amazon is great if you consume a lot on Amazon and you want the cash back. American Express is great if you know how to use their points. You have to be clever on how to use the points. Capital One is great because you get 2 points for everything, and those points can be used for lots of different things. If you are staying at a Marriott hotel, get a Marriott credit card because you get like 20 points for every dollar you spend at Marriott, not on other things. So you have to figure out the points game, and whether you want to figure it out and spend the time figuring it out. But I have a lot of credit cards. I mean, a lot. I'm not going to tell you how many, but a lot of credit cards. And it, all smooth. They all get paid automatically. And I track them all in Quicken, so I know exactly what I'm spending on. I know exactly what I owe. I know who's who everywhere. Quicken is an amazing piece of software. Here's another financial advice for you. Get Quicken. It's only getting better. It's gotten much better. You can track your assets, your liabilities, your investments. You can track your spending. You can track your credit cards. You can track everything. You can track your bank accounts. Everything downloads automatically to Quicken. In the old days, when I first bought Quicken, which was in the 90s, you had to input the info by hand, which I did. I literally have financial records of everything I've ever done since the 1990s. So, yeah, I mean, those are some others. But, and in terms of investments, don't day trade, diversify. Diversify widely. That is my advice. Thanks, Prophet. Really, really appreciate it. Not your average algorithm. When you water a plant, the water always penetrates the plant. It has to in order for it to survive. But truth and logic often don't penetrate the majority of human beings, even though they need those inputs in order to survive. How can this be? It can be because the plant has no choice. The plant is programmed. It is predetermined in every aspect to seek out water and to suck it in. It has no, what's the word? Choice. Human beings have free will. We have a choice. We can turn on the engine of reason or turn it off. We can use reason or not. We can think or not. We can focus and orient our mind towards thinking, towards reality or not. Now, that is a great innovation of evolution because it allows us, through reason, to think abstractly and to create the kind of environment we have around us. And human beings do that more often than not. And the evidence of that is the world that exists around you. But it also allows you not to do it, particularly when survival is far removed from the action itself. That is the survival, the negative survival consequence of the evasion, the lack of use of reason, is far into the future, it affects you in a way that you can't easily, it requires effort to perceive. And as a consequence, it is relatively easy for people. It's very hard for primitive people to actually, evade their actual survival, because everything that they do is life or death instantly or in the very foreseeable future. But in a modern society, we are so shielded from death. We are so shielded from death. You can eat really, really, really bad food for a long, long, long time. You can get obese and you can get diabetes. And modern medicine will keep pumping you in with insulin and all kinds of drugs to control your disease, and you can live into old age. Now, you will live a miserable life. It will be difficult. It will be really hard, and it will be stressful, and you won't be able to live fully. But you'd have to plan for that. You'd have to think about that. The survival is not instantly. I eat poison, I die. I evade the lion over there, he eats me. So we have free will, and therefore we can choose to ignore truths that, yes, have consequences in our lives, but in ways that are beyond the perceptual level, that are ways that require more thinking to figure out. Thank you. Good question, not your average algorithm. Vadim, if mining and trading crypto is not a productive activity, does that also mean that day or swing trading regular commodity stocks also not a productive activity? How different is it from gambling in Vegas? It's very different. So I think gambling in Vegas and crypto are very similar. But I think, buying and selling stocks on a daily basis does have a productive function. It has a productive function primarily to provide liquidity to the market. The market needs the people buying and selling in order to be able to raise capital for companies that actually seek capital and issue shares. The only reason people provide them with capital is they know they can sell them when they want. And one of the reasons they can sell them when they want at a reasonable price is because people are constantly buying and selling your stock. It is also true that many of the people who are trading regularly, buying and selling stocks, are people who do think, at least, they have information. And to that extent, the information that they have gets embedded into the stock. And the fact that that information is embedded in the stock makes, makes allocation of capital throughout the economy more productive and more effective. Now, if you want to delve deeper into this, you're going to have to take my class on the Introduction to Finance that I'm teaching now at ARU, or it's actually, we're going to talk about exactly this issue today in class, or you can also take my Introduction to Finance class at Peterson Academy, and that class will be out next month, I think, or in April. By the way, I think I've told you the capitalism course is out. It looks gorgeous. It's just the production values are so high. I encourage you to check it out. PetersonAcademy.com. PetersonAcademy.com. Check out my class on capitalism. Thank you, Vadim. So, yeah, I think mining and trading crypto is, in a sense, not just, I don't think productive, but actually wasteful. Think of the talent, but also think about the energy. You're expending huge amount of energy to get something that is meaningless, as far as I can tell. Gambling in Vegas is entertainment. So that is the productive function that gambling plays. I mean, you go and watch a performance, some singer is that a productive activity? Yeah, in a sense, well, it's an entertainment activity, which is part of life. In my view, gambling is entertainment. For some, it's an obsession, and then that's not good. All right, Supercast. Hi, Yaron. Hope you and your wife are well. What are the differences between conservative and liberal views of freedom, and how do they contrast with the objectivist view? I don't know. We'd have to spend a lot of time. I think that it would be a whole show on the conservative and liberal attitudes, and it depends what you mean by liberal, left, or classical liberal. But I think the left attitude towards freedom is basically the idea that people should be able to do whatever they want to do. And that means if somebody who's poor doesn't have the money to buy a fancy car, then they're not free because they really want to buy a fancy car and they're not able to buy a fancy car because they don't have the money. So money, the lack of money is preventing them from doing it, and therefore they're not free. So their conception of freedom is the ability to do whatever the hell you want. I think conservatives' idea of freedom has more to do with responsibilities and duties, and you should be free, but you have to. Your freedom is constrained by your responsibilities and your morality but primarily your responsibility to others, and by the common good. Of course, the left also buys into this. So your freedom is constrained and should be constrained by the common good. I think objectivism has a very clear definition of freedom. That is the absence of coercion. That if freedom is the state in which you can use your mind in pursuit of your values, in the absence of coercion, with no coercion, force, authority telling you what you can and cannot do. Authority with guns behind it, right? Force behind it. So freedom is the freedom to act. It's to pursue goals, pursue values based on reason, free of coercion. So coercion is the thing that eliminates freedom, not lack of money, not lack of whatever. And there are no responsibilities here. There's no duties here. Freedom is freedom. So, freedom means pursuing your values based on reason. Again, free of coercion. There's a lot that can be said on alternative definitions of freedom. we'll do a show on that. James, how do you keep the cynicism and nihilism all around us from seeping into your subconscious and your own orientation towards other people in the world? I find with all the negativity around me, I tend to internalize it. I mean, I think that the thing is you have to focus your life as much as possible on the positive. You have to have clear values. You have to know what is important to you. And you have to be able to clearly focus and orient your energy and your actions towards your values. And this is achieved by having great friends and lovers and having, just being in a positive, beautiful, I've emphasized the importance of beauty, a beautiful environment, surrounding yourself with amazing things, controlling the things that you can control, and accepting that there's a lot in the world you can't control, and learning to accept that, learning to live with that while focusing on the things you can control, and oriented 99% of your energy to the things you can control, and only spending 1% of your energy on the frustration of all the things you cannot control. You still have to recognize that you can't control it and think about it, but the rest of the time, value creation, value creation, value creation. That's it. The pursuit of values. That's what life is about. What brand? Do objectivists have a consensus on gun rights? I think objectivists generally support individual self-defense, but I haven't found any stance on issues like assault weapons, background checks, licensing, red flag laws. I think objectivists don't have a consensus around the details of all of that. I have said that I think a lot of that depends on the context. I think that's why a lot of gun laws should be basically determined at the local level, maybe the state level, maybe even the kind of local level. You might have different rules about assault rifles in the countryside than you do in the middle of the city. You might have different, other things, but I think objectivists generally, this is not true of all objectivists, this is an area where there's definitely disagreement. I think generally objectivists are for some kind of background checks and licensing, but in terms of where the line is between what is a self-defense weapon and what is not, what should be approved and what should not, I think that should be left to government agencies at a kind of a local level, and the kind of threats that individuals face and the ability of the police locally to deal with those threats based on how close the police is to you and based on, again, the threat. So it's a contextual issue. It's a complex issue. It's going to require a lot of thinking, a lot of application of the objectivist view of rights, of individual rights to this, but also the perspective of the government has a monopoly over the use of retaliatory force, force, and therefore the government is interested in guns. Guns are important, and what you should register, when you should register, whether you should register, all of those, I think are up to be determined by philosophers of law in the future. So I have a view about these things, but I don't think there's consensus. Primarily, as Ayn Rand said when she was asked about this, it's a complicated issue. Philosophers of law are going to have to figure this out. She didn't have a kind of a quick one-size-fit-all, a quick answer to this. She often did have for a lot of issues, but for gun rights, she did not. She did not have a clear-cut position on it. She clearly believed the government had a role in it. Otherwise, but what the scope of that role was, she never got into. And therefore, there's certainly no objectivism as a philosophy answer to this. This is going to have to be hashed out in the future when it becomes relevant. Andrew, a conservative said, re-Ukraine, that we have the responsibility to stand up for weaker countries that can't stand up for themselves while at least pushing back on Trump. This rationale is not morally right and unpersuasive. Yeah, of course. I mean, imagine you would say that on the Palestinians. We have to stand up for the Palestinians because Israel's stronger than them, and they're the weakest state, and therefore we have to stand for the side of the Palestinians. No, the question is here a question of good versus bad, good versus evil. What is right and what is wrong? Right? And that is the only thing. That is the fundamental that matters. And then beyond that, it's what is the strategic interest of the United States. Now we could say, we are, let's say with the Vietnam War, we are pro South Vietnam, we're against North Vietnam, but it's not strategic interest of the United States, so we're not going to intervene one way or the other. Not going to sell weapons. I think we should have sold weapons, but we're not going to intervene. That's fine. But so you could make a moral declaration and then have a different opinion about strategic interest. In Ukraine, I think they both align. We have a strategic interest in Ukraine beating back the Russians, and they're the good guys. And it's important to, and they're not the good guys because they're weaker. That's pathetic. That's a pathetic, conservative, altruistic explanation. All right, we've got a few more questions. We're going to go through these relatively fast. The Trump-Zelensky press conference was a meeting between a man without a suit and a suit without a man. Yeah, I saw that meme. Absolutely. Michael Sanders, the more MAGA does ridiculous things, the easier it is for the far left to reclaim power. The MAGA wraps itself in the ignorance-like blanket. Yeah, I mean, the more the extremes dominate their political parties, the more the more those political parties get discredited, and the more we get a seesaw in terms of power. It's going to be interesting if any political party is willing to capture sanity, and eradicate kind of the nuttiness that they each have embraced. Henry, even legal immigrants can't receive Social Security benefits they paid for. Indians on H-1B have a 100-year backlog on Greencards. They won't get Social Security either, even if they work legally for 100 years. Yeah, pretty disgusting. So we're basically pretending that this is a saving program, but we're leeching off of legal immigrants. We're leeching off of immigrants, legal or illegal, doesn't matter. We're leeching off of people living in America working for a living. That's who's paying for grandma's Social Security. It's pretty disgusting. Another reason to hate Social Security and to hate anti-immigration. Michael, did you see the clip Netanyahu released kissing up to Trump? Just pathetic. Everyone is afraid of Trump. We have an unpredictable lunatic toddler in charge of the most powerful military in the world. Yeah, I agree with you completely, Michael. It's pathetic. I didn't see the clip, but I can imagine it. Netanyahu is an ass kisser generally, so to the Americans. I think you have to have a green card to get the Social Security. I don't think if you stay on H-1B, I don't think you get Social Security. I think you need the green card. Indeed, you have to leave the country once you retire because you're off of H-1B. So you can't get Social Security. You're not going to send the check to India. So I don't think H-1B can collect Social Security. They're eligible once they get the green card. Hopper Campbell, is there more of an attitude in favor of deregulation around the country? There's been some loosening of zoning regulations in many cities. Yes, a lot of that comes from the yes in my backyard movement, which is primarily a left of center, right of center kind of movement. The yes in my backyard is leading to a lot of loosening of zoning regulations. And basically people are coming to realize that the cost of housing, the cost of living being as high as it is to a large extent a consequence of zoning and other building regulations in many cities. So yes, even in relatively leftist places, zoning is being loosened because of yes in my backyard. So good for them. It's an important movement. Ryan, I have to write a super chat because the stickers are all too happy. We need some stickers showing the West sliding into modern dark ages. Well, it ain't happening yet, so we're not sliding anywhere yet. We're sliding, but so slowly. And we're not really sliding. We're just not growing. And in some ways, we're in the dark ages, right? If you look at, the art around us, but the art that's being produced around us. But I don't think it's quite that bad yet. Gail, should the U.S. be in working cooperation with Russia in the space program? No, absolutely not. It should not. It shouldn't be in working with anything Russia. I mean, if I had my way, we wouldn't have diplomatic relations with Russia. We would cut them off. We'd boycott everything. We would have zero involvement in Russia. I think we still buy uranium from Russia, the United States. Sylvanas, excited for SpaceX Starship Flight 8 today. Yes. Those are always fun to watch. The better part of Elon Musk is the Starship. All right, Andrew says, peace through strength is a phrase that is being distorted. How is strength able to be sold to the public as standing up against a country fighting for freedom and giving up to a dictator? Well, the problem here is not the idea of peace through strength. Peace through strength is good and a valid concept and valid. It's just that Trump is weak. The Trump administration is weak. Stopping cyber offensive operations against Russia is weak. Kissing Putin's behind is weak. Creating or explicitly articulating a moral equivalency between Zelensky and Putin is weak. Explicitly articulating a moral equivalency between between Russia and Ukraine is weak. So peace through strength is the way to achieve peace. And our failing here is we're not exhibiting strength. We're exhibiting weakness. Ben Jackson says, moving to Europe in a month from the U.S. for work and lifestyle. Not super worried about safety, but would love to see EU get their stuff together. Yeah, I mean, from a violent crime perspective, in spite of the Islamists, in spite of the stabbing, the cars running people down that you hear about in the news all the time, Europe is still much safer in terms of violent crime than the U.S. And militarily, if you're moving to Western Europe, it's going to be a long time before there's a real threat to Western Europe from Russia or anybody else. I think you're fine. I wouldn't let security worry about it. But I agree with you. I would love to see the EU get their stuff together. They seem to be taking the first few steps in order to do that. France is in no risk of invasion. The primary risk France faces is from its Muslim population. Paris is a beautiful city, although it does have a lot of problems, strikes, Muslims at the periphery, a lot of demonstrations, a lot of riots. But yeah, it's an amazing city. Enjoy it. Enjoy the food. Enjoy the museums. Enjoy just the vibe. The vibe is amazing. But yeah, and hopefully have a good internet service. All right. Thank you, Ben. Thank you to all the super chatters. Really, really, really appreciate your support. Tonight, we're back on. Hard to believe. But 7 p.m. East Coast time, we'll be back on. We have an interview with Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, who is a PhD student in philosophy, an objectivist, who's written, I think, an interesting article about the founding of America. It should be a lot of fun. Introduce you to somebody you probably don't know, you probably never heard of, and is one of our young intellectuals, up and coming young intellectuals. So it'll be a fun discussion. I hope you join me. Make sure to join me, and I will see you tonight. Have a great rest of your week, and if not tonight, then I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of News Roundup. Bye, everybody.